3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, granitegrok.com. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from granitegrok.com.
Grok Talk.
All right, coming to you from Concord, New Hampshire. You're talking. No talking. Shh. Coming to you from Concord, New Hampshire. Thank you to the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers for allowing us to use the space in their offices to do this program. Of course, this is brought to you by granitegrok.com, New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site. All right, that's not what it says on the sign, is it? Oh, yes, it should be. It should be. Conservative. All right, anyway, I got that screwed up. So please follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, read our stuff, blah, blah, blah. Turning microphones on so Mike can talk. Go ahead, you can talk now.
Oh, thank you.
So
I feel honored.
Well,
being
so
allowed
you walked in and you were talking during my introduction. It's very...
I'm like The Shining. I'm back.
All right, we are expecting Jim Kofalt shortly.
He's just taking a quick restroom break on his way in here.
Oh, good luck. I hope he's in that restroom because
Does
this
he
one
need a
has no light.
flashlight?
Yeah.
I have a flashlight.
We all have smartphones.
He's got a smartphone now. Yes. All right, the bulb blew. I called Ed and told him, so he knows.
I bet he's got supplies somewhere.
He does. I went looking. We couldn't find any light bulbs. There could be some in his room someplace. Yeah. So anyway, hop on the headset there right in
We're
front of you.
such a high-budget operation.
Here we are. No, we're not in charge of the light bulbs, so good morning. How are you, sir?
Well, welcome, Jim Kofalt, conservative activist, Tea Party guy, and one of the founding members of the 603 Alliance and Conservative Business League.
I'm not sure which headphone you're in. Talk. Say hello.
Hello.
You got him.
Say it again.
Hello again.
Okay, here we go. The headphones are all... They were ordered at one point, and then we kind of have so many that they kind of get moved around.
Mine is always this way.
I know which ones ours are. So anyway, welcome to the show. It's very informal, if you hadn't noticed. We talk about light bulbs and bathrooms and constitutions and
condoms
and caucuses, and we were talking about condoms in the last segment. Yeah,
we're on the C words now.
We're on the C word. So 603 Alliance. Brief statement about what it is, and of course we can talk about the CBL if you want as well.
Sure.
Just so people understand, because there's some misconceptions about what the purpose of the group is.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I actually was just talking to a group of volunteers, and I asked people, what do you think the 603 Alliance is? And somebody gave me a really good answer, which was the 603 Alliance is about consolidating voters who believe in the Constitution and smaller government.
That's an excellent answer.
I thought it was a perfect answer. The 603 Alliance started late last year, I guess, were some of the first meetings. And it was a group of conservative activists and leaders of some grassroots groups getting together and just deciding that we needed to try to affect political change, and particularly trying to focus on the principles of the Constitution. So, you know, there are people who are, you know, there's a wide range of people who believe in smaller government, from liberty activists, free staters, all the way to more traditional Reagan conservatives who have strong opinions about social issues and so on. But as Ronald Reagan said, there's this kind of 80% principle. If we agree on 80% of things, we ought to be working together. And the 603 Alliance is about trying to get those folks together and operate somewhat as a group to say, look, there are going to be things that we don't agree on, but we agree that the federal government should be out of education. We agree that the NSA shouldn't be spying on us. We agree on the right to bear arms. There's all these things that we can agree on, and yet somehow we manage to be pretty fractured when it comes around to election time. Mm-hmm. So if we look back at the November elections, which was when I think a lot of these conversations started, there were a lot of people who were frustrated with the choices that we had, especially in the statewide election for governor and in the U.S. Senate race. Those of us who believe strongly in the Second Amendment, I think, were really concerned about Scott Brown.
You think?
I might have read something on the Grok about that once or twice.
A day.
So, I think, the Republican Party is saying, we should be having those debates during the primary process. And I think that's very true. We should be having those debates during the primary process. The problem is that we end up very fractured because we have maybe one candidate who's very libertarian, we have one candidate who's more traditional conservative, and then we have the kind of the mainstream candidate. In the case of the presidential primary, we've got one or two or three.
Baskin-Robbins. It's the Baskin-Robbins primary.
We've got one or two or three that are maybe on the, we'll be nice and call them the moderate Republican end of the spectrum.
The squishes.
And
I can say it.
I fully expect that all but one of those will probably drop out early. That some of them are probably running not so much to win, but to divert attention and to ultimately steer the electorate towards that chosen moderate candidate. And then we have this wide range of people on the conservative and libertarian end of the spectrum, and it doesn't take a majority to win the New Hampshire primary. You can do it with a fairly small plurality. So what the 603 Alliance is doing, and what we plan for October, is a caucus, an Iowa-style caucus, to be held in New Hampshire, open to registered New Hampshire voters who are either a registered Republican or undeclared. And the way that kind of caucus works is that you have groups who go stand with their candidate's group. That's your way of voting at the caucus. You go stand in a group, and then the groups are counted. At the end of that process, the two groups that have the smallest number of people are dissolved. They can go join other groups. There can be some speeches and politicking in between, but ultimately you repeat the process with a smaller number of candidates. Again, you drop the bottom two vote takers until you end up at the end with just two, and of those two, one is going to be the winner because they have more people standing in their group. The nice thing about this runoff process, this caucus, is that it allows people to, if their first choice isn't selected, they have an opportunity to pick their second choice and potentially their third choice. It
allows them to make those mental trade-offs and judge for themselves, does this person meet 80% of my criteria for a candidate? And I'm going to assume that out of the conservative half of the spectrum, more than half of the candidates will come to that 80% mark for most people. And so what this gives you, as I think was said in one of our meetings, is this gives you the opportunity to, first of all, self-select a candidate that's pretty close to your views, and secondly, and decide that person's acceptable, and secondly, to end up voting in the primary for somebody who is your first or second or maybe, worst case, third choice pick for somebody who's an acceptable conservative, as opposed to having the establishment run the table because the conservatives are all split, and you end up with the choice in the general election of only the Democrat or your last place choice for an acceptable conservative.
So to get from where you were to where you just said, at the end of the caucus process, you will have everybody there, and you will have a chosen caucus winner. Now, what's the next step? Because we know where we go when the primary comes, but we've just, as a group of people, however many, 100, 1,000, 10,000, whoever shows up, decided as a group that this is the caucus winner.
Right.
Now what happens?
Right. So what happens going into the caucus is that we are asking people, as you participate in this, we are asking you to come out of this and support the winner. So we're doing this in mid-October. So we have between then and early next year, when the primary takes place, a lot going on in New Hampshire around that time, and a lot of people getting involved with their candidate or with promoting a candidate. We're asking people to commit as you go into the caucus. We're asking you to commit that coming out of the caucus, you're going to be working in whatever you would be doing to influence the primary. We're asking you to stand for that candidate going forward. Now,
and to spread the word.
That's a tall order. because, really I think a lot of people hear about this and they say, well, this is a great idea until their candidate doesn't win. And then maybe not so much. But here's what I would say about that. The critical thing is, if we don't stand together, then the old playbook that is pretty well known at this point will play out again. We will have a sort of progressive Republican nominee, and Karl Rove knows that. Everybody pretty much in the Republican establishment knows that.
They're counting on us being divided, which is why we're going to put a lot of effort into getting people to come together, and it's why it's a caucus, because we want the people to come together, not for us to tell them this is the best candidate.
Right. I mean, it's the way I would put it is that we don't really the establishment doesn't really need to play divide and conquer with us because we're already doing it to ourselves. So, my question to people who are considering coming to the caucus, and we're trying to get 1,000 people there. So I think we're pretty ambitious, but I think we can do it. But my question to them is, if you go in and your candidate doesn't win, would you rather have your second choice as the presidential nominee, or would you have your last choice or your second to the last choice as the presidential nominee or as president? And I think most people would say, that's a no-brainer. I'll take my second choice. We believe that if people don't get unified and start thinking that way, then we're going to end up with another Clinton-Bush race in 2016. And, if people felt disenfranchised in the last election with Scott Brown and Walt Havenstein running, I think it's going to be that times 100.
Gee, and I thought we did pretty well in that race.
Well, obviously, it would have worked out better if we had managed the primary effectively in this particular manner.
Right.
But just so people know, everybody at this table is or has been on the steering committee for the 603 Alliance. I can also tell you that I've spoken to several people in the group, and not everybody is in agreement on who their first or second candidate is. Relatively close.
No, we're
but
all...
nobody's agreed to anything. I mean, we may all walk into the caucus and go in 8 or 9 different directions.
Right.
This is very likely to happen. So, any presumption that we all agree on who that first person is crazy, because we don't.
we absolutely don't.
And the other thing is that we've also all agreed that even if it's not our first candidate, we will abide by the decision at the caucus, which is important because if we expect you to do that, we have to lead by example. And
absolutely.
That's really what we want to do.
Now, it's come to my understanding that the establishment GOP has given the 603 Alliance no small bit of grief because this is a primary state, not a caucus state. What are you doing? This is not how things are supposed to work. To which I go, yeah, stick it to them. But, what are the other things that you're hearing from the people who believe this is a really bad idea, mostly because it goes after their moderate or, as I call them, a squishy candidate?
We're actually going to take a break. You can answer that question after, and then we can talk about the CBL, because I want to talk about that too, so people know about that, because they're different.
Rock Dog.